Okay, hello. I'm Alice, and I started MakielAB just about a year ago with the idea to investigate the possibility of a play space that happens both digitally and physically. And so I'm going to talk to you briefly today about 3D printing, which we're in Germany, pretty much the birthplace of 3D printing, so I'm not going to go into too much detail of how it happens, because I think you guys all know exactly how it happens. 3D printing with the crossover with play materials and play spaces, so toys and games. This is me, a little 3D printed head of me. I got scanned when I visited MakerBot. Does this work? OK, this isn't happening. Can someone just press down for me? And huh? Here comes somebody. All right, so, back one. So two things happened that got me onto this. So previously, I was working commissioning games for one of the UK broadcasters. And these two books had a really significant influence on me and my thinking and just kind of what was going on in my life. The Toy Story book is really interesting. It's a bit of a polemic by a journalist, but documents the story of the Western, British mainly, and German toy industries and American toy industries, and the 3 decades of what has happened to them. And to summarize, it is a long period of mergers and acquisitions and the wholesale move to the Far East in terms of manufacturing, with with Germany basically hanging in there. But depending on who you read, over 90% of the Western market's toys are now made in the Far East. And in the same time, my husband wrote the book on the right, which is a book about making and what was called fabbing at the time. But this is where the 3D printing stuff got really interesting. And a really long time ago, I made an avatar builder with pixels. This is in like 1999. And I was just wondering at the time, like, digital toys and wood making and fabbing be able to mean that we could do physical toys. So I started to do a bit of research, and I was at the toy fair in the States and really struck by how all the digital stuff was in a basement, and then there was hundreds of thousands of square feet of floor space to the physical toys, and the two worlds were not talking to each other as much as they can be. Early days for it, I guess. But I walked the whole of the toy show floor and kind of found like 2 mentions of Facebook and maybe 6 mentions of Twitter. And those 2 things alone aren't an indication of like a digital world, but nevertheless, the absence of the digital stuff and the fact that it was all contained in a room in the basement was really interesting. This is one of my World of Warcraft clans, guilds. We were having a party in the game, and there was a skinny dipping moment, and so we took some pictures. And this is a 3D print of a World of Warcraft character run by a company called Fingerprints. These guys have been going for a couple of years, and this is the first instance that I saw of the ability to take a play world and turn it into a physical object. This is done with some American technology called Z-Corp printing, where they use basically a corn-based material and then soak it in super glue. So it's no good for toys, but it's really good for statues. But what Fingerprints were doing was just printing the game artifacts as is. What folks are doing now, this is Minecraft, and this is where we're really beginning to see kind of what people are calling user-generated manufacturing, where you can build something utterly unique to yourself and have it made into an object, usually a one-off. So back to Stormtroopers. Can they be turned into dolls or robots or action figures? I was thinking, the only difference between an action figure and a doll is usually that the action figure has knees and elbows so that they can do things like ride a motorbike, whereas Barbie can't because her legs stick out like that. So I was like, OK, I want an action doll. What can we do with this? This is the girls' floor at Hamleys, which is the biggest toy store in the UK. And it's pretty much representative of what a toy store tends to look like. I don't know how many of you have kids, but I'm sure you'll recognize that generally the girls' stuff is pink and the boys' stuff is black and orange and green. And there is little choice. Barbie, Bratz, Liv, they all look the same. This one American girl is a US $450 million a year company, and it's the one where you can do a little bit of customization. Not much, but what they basically do is they make 40 different dolls, and you can choose the one that looks most like yourself. So making toys is hard, really, really hard. Making physical objects is really hard. What basically this comes down to is if you want to make an object and mass produce it, you have to mill a part, and that mold is going to cost you something in the region of $100,000. I mean, more or less. It has to be extremely durable to be able to withstand the millions of injection molded plastic or whatever that's going into it. This is not something that a person can usually stand up and do. You have to have that mold made, usually in China. You have to have a minimum order quantity of whatever it is you're making. You have to ship it and warehouse it. That's how the toy and generally the manufactured object world works. These guys have brute forced customization by just making lots of the same thing ever so slightly different. Now with 3D printing, a lot of this stuff goes out of the window, which is the interesting bit, the really easy bit, the stuff that's enabled by the internet. Molds, you don't need those $100,000 molds anymore. That means that pretty much anybody can stand up and make an object. Materials QA, the basic powder, nylon powder that goes into selective laser sintered plastic is a bioplastic. You can eat it. It won't do you any harm. It's just nylon. It's recycled through each print thing. No more kind of worrisome, dubious, chemicals in the stuff. Minimum order quantities, that idea that you have to run off 10 million of something before, for the same price as one. And in theory, warehousing. Back to customization. When you actually look at what people do themselves, given an object and the ability to customize, they are incredibly creative. So this is just what I call factory of one, but you go onto Etsy and you just put in, doll clothes or whatever, and you start to see creativity, the likes of which you will never see back on the shelves in Hamleys. I found these yesterday. These are the social network Blythes. We went to a Blythe meet in Manchester, and this is called what I call the overbite mod. It's where you sandpaper off the lower lip of the doll so that she has that cute kind of thing. And that's what people do, given the option. Give them the tools and they will make. Halfway through what we were doing, because one of the things about using 3D printing as a consumer-facing product is it basically it's really new, and there's very little that you can kind of look at and go, well, how did they do it? It's a real trial and error kind of area, which is really fun, but can be kind of dangerous. Halfway through last year, these guys turned up in the Apple store. And this is Fresh Fiber. They do custom print iPhone cases, and there's that thing where if it's in the Apple store, you kind of assume that it's okay for the world to be ready for. So the easy bit, going away from the really hard stuff, the easy bit was, can we just do this? You get a sketch, you can find a 3D modeler. That bit is really easy. There are guys and girls all over the place. I found one on the Shapeways forum who will turn your sketch into a thing. And this whole process took a couple of months to get from paper to a posable standing object. This bit was really hard. So for this particular type of 3D printing, it's really easy to make a thing. And if you don't, you want to tweak it, you could just make something else. And a week later, you have progress. So that's amazing. But basically, you're printing in 0.1 millimeter layers. And because it's powdery, it will grind flat over time to a certain point. And so things will loosen. And so jointing and moving parts are difficult. They're not going to be impossible, and it's going to be a work in progress, but that's an area that is hard. That was a little moment of like, we've nearly done it. Making clothes, that was easy, weirdly easy, and not cheap, but nevertheless, at the moment, we're having lots and lots of tiny, tiny clothes made by some clothing factories in the Docklands. So again, at the moment, we're making all of our physical products in London, which is a complete step change to how everything is normally done. Again, it's legwork. You have to find these people, but it's still just about there. Putting makeup on turns out to be easy. Painting is really, really hard. This is actually what happens in the background. We make 3D models, and the low-res version can walk into a game, and the high-res version can go out onto a printer. We're also making them to be hackable, because we really want this whole idea of creative making and play to just carry on. Not least, we don't have all the answers, but also this stuff gets really fun when people go, yeah, it's a doll. Oh, it's an action doll. Oh, it's a robot. Oh, maybe it's something else. And you start to realize that your physical object can be permanently connected to your digital place. And where does that go? This is hard. This is a zombie doll. It means you can only get this with a human. We have yet to find a robot that can do this, but one day. This is what we need. For anybody wanting to make consumer-facing products using 3D printing, you will need the same. You'll need colored plastics. There aren't enough because there's a lot of patents in the way, but they are expiring in a couple of years. Biodegradable plastics are coming in. There was a key German factory that exploded a month ago and has supplied half the world for 3D printing automotive parts and aerospace parts. And now there is rationing, which is great, and is going to happen for 6 months. So we actually need more people to dive into this game, and already there are suppliers jumping in to replace what was happening in the factory, and I don't actually know where it is, but we're looking into that. Better resolution, faster print speed, and cheaper material costs basically all come with Moore's law. As soon as you get that kind of either hard stuff like explosions or Moore's law stuff out of the way, that just happens naturally. We were supposed to launch today and are launching in about a week with a physical alpha, which is unusual. But because this is such an unexplored space, we basically want to explore it with people who are interested in what we're doing. So Makey.me if you want to have a look. But we basically let people digitally design a toy, and then we physically make it. That's the plan. That's me. Thank you.